Welcome to Tech Transformation with CGT and RIS News, where we explore the innovative tech strategies and trends in retail and consumer goods. I'm Lisa Johnston, the editor-in-chief of CGT. In this episode, I'm talking with Tom Madrecki, VP of Supply Chain at the Consumer Brands Association. Now, Tom's here to give us a quick update on the state of the retail and CPG supply chain, some of the challenges brands are currently facing, and how they're using technology to navigate them. Tom, welcome.
Lisa, great to be here. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, it's great to have you. Can you get us started? Just tell us a little bit about your background and about the Consumer Brands Association.
Sure thing. The Consumer Brands Association represents the totality of the consumer packaged goods industry. So food, beverage, household, and personal care manufacturers, many of the brands that Americans know and love. I have the privilege of working on supply chain issues on behalf of the association and that industry. Both advocacy, working with government policymakers to take time, cost, and complexity out of the supply chain, thinking about how we can strengthen and build greater resiliency, as well as fostering greater collaboration, working on industry affairs efforts that help the industry move forward and respond to the challenges that we're all facing today.
Great, thanks so much. And I'm glad you mentioned collaboration. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So let's just dive right in. We're hearing a lot of mixed results from CPG and retail leaders about the challenges of the supply chain today. I just want to let our audience know who's listening. We're recording this in mid-August to just give some perspective. But there's a study released last month that it remains a top concern for leaders, but we're also hearing signs that things are improving. So, would like to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, I think if you look around the margins, right, you see some moderation of transportation costs or capacity coming back online. But it's very clear that supply chain remains the number one, if not one of those top concerns that are facing every CPG. It's a differentiator in the marketplace. Demand for consumer packaged goods continues to rise sort of at record levels at the same time that the supply chain is in crisis. Much of this is underpinned by a labor shortage that's only growing worse. And the cost to make and ship goods continues to set record after record. So the need to ease supply chain pressures has never been greater, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that are really causing the most pain today?
Yeah, I get a chance to talk to member company executives all the time about this, and the answers I get are varied, but also very similar, which is basically to say that every link in the supply chain is challenged. I mentioned the cost of making, shipping products is at record levels. Labor is a huge concern. You've also had this successive series of events, not just the pandemic, but war in Ukraine, extreme weather, new COVID waves and sort of like what that looks like, cybersecurity events. You see just over and over again this strain being put on that system, and that system's never sort of able to catch up. I think that speaks to a lack of resiliency, as well as a lack of visibility that we have, both about how supply chains operate and about the potential impacts of disruptions when they occur. So as demand continues, for CPG at least, continues to rise, we've seen 10 straight months where demand exceeded even the panic buying levels of March 2020. When people couldn't get toilet paper or everything was out of stock. Demand today is markedly higher than it was then. So I think that one speaks to the industry sort of stepping up to the plate and being able to keep delivering. But clearly something needs to be done to respond to some of those long-term or systemic challenges that are sort of the cracks in the system that we're only not totally seeing because the industry is doing such a good job, I think, manning the forts, if you will.
Can you talk a little bit about how they are responding? So it sounds like what you're saying is that a lot of the CPGs are having the same problems or similar problems, but I imagine they're not all responding in the same ways. So can you talk about some of the different ways that they are navigating this?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that you've seen clearly come to the fore is the role of technology. And thinking about, especially in the context of a labor crunch, especially in terms of being able to keep pace with that record demand, well, how can you use and leverage technology creatively? One of the initiatives that the Consumer Brands Association and member companies launched during the pandemic was an effort around contactless delivery. It was initially, of course, really around safety, minimizing contact between drivers and dock personnel. But that same technology and the ability to take paperwork out of the system and automate processes has huge potential to increase efficiency across your operation. Just being able, and then especially if you can marry it to other technology like geolocation technology or visibility tools that are within the supply chain, you can start to imagine a more automated and seamless, end-to-end flow of goods and services, and really trying to unite those. So I think that you see companies considering immediate technology fixes, but then also sort of that broader transformational approach. How do you knit all of those technologies together to have more of a network type model and build greater efficiency, being aware of the fact that you're going to have these record levels of demand at the same time as maybe not the greatest labor pool or the greatest access to transportation. I think trying to mitigate some of those concerns. The other thing that I think you see companies doing is looking to the policy space, and that's where I think the association comes in particular. So much of this is tied to the state of government policy, and then what can be done from a government level to positively impact supply chains going forward.
Can you just talk a little bit about the contactless delivery force? I know we've certainly covered it, but for those who are listening that might not be aware of it, can you give a little background on how it was formed and what it's up to now?
Yeah, so we today have over probably 50 CPGs and retailers involved. These are national brands, all looking to solve common challenge, which is today you have paperwork with bills of lading. Just the delivery confirmation process is rife with, I think, opportunities to change how that's done. Of course, again, started with really an effort around keeping people safe, minimizing contact during COVID times. Now it's really around efficiency, being able to scale the adoption of that technology and find greater ways to sort of minimize the touch points, but then also just get people in and out of facilities faster, get more trucks back on the road so that the overall system efficiency improves. What we saw is that companies that were able to adopt contactless technology were minimizing dwell time by upwards of 40 minutes on average. And again, that just puts more capacity back into the system so that everyone benefits, but it also enables those facilities that have that technology just to work that much better.
What about technologies for the workforce? I think that's something that would probably be of particular interest for our retail listeners.
Yeah, and certainly I think it's like an augmented perspective, various AI tool, like sort of like things that equip the the folks to do their job better. I think all of that is very much under consideration and in play. I think one of the technology tools that's quickly, I think, sort of seeing, we're starting to say it's a renewal of resurgence of excitement around, is not just visibility to maybe in a tangential way or sort of this is a nice to have, but the application of visibility across your supply chain to really understand and leverage that data. I think that there's just a huge opportunity for CPGs and retailers alike to leverage data, often in more collaborative settings as well. And I think that speaks to the retailer CPG relationship, is when not only do you each have that data on hand and you can each leverage it together, but if you can collaborate with it and really try to be more in lockstep with your supply chains, then everyone stands to improve, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And I wonder, are you hearing an increased willingness? And certainly the challenges of data sharing they go back for a very long time. And we did hear of progress being made during the pandemic. So do you still see more of that willingness continue to work more collaboratively?
Absolutely. I think that's certainly still an area that's sort of rife with opportunity. I also think that same opportunity is also something that's being even explored at that governmental level. So there's an initiative that was launched called FLOW, Freight Logistics Optimization Works. The Department of Transportation stood up, including several retailers and CPGs that are a part of that initiative. I think that it's sort of now is the moment in time where that's maybe the pandemic is the tipping point, right? Or maybe this is that, like, I say the straw that broke the camel's back. Hopefully nothing's breaking any further, but that this is really that opportunity where we can seize the opportunity presented by data sharing and just find common ground and make some significant changes that enhance efficiency for everyone.
Thinking of opportunities and thinking towards the future, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but if you did and you could dust it off, what's your outlook for the supply chain and the challenges for the rest of the year, maybe even into next year?
Yeah, I think that you look at rising commodity costs, an inflationary environment today. Certainly, as the Fed continues to hike interest rates and things of that nature, there's the chance of recession. I think that companies are going to have to wrestle almost with how do they simultaneously meet the record levels of demand today, and then also at the same time project out what's going to be that new product mix that's in demand, or what's going to be how is consumer spending patterns going to change? Or are they going to go to a different product or pay less for it? There's all of that to navigate in that economic volatility. So I think that that's critical for companies to address in the near term. I do think that if you look at the supply chain, traditional supply chain metrics, I mentioned transportation capacity and cost earlier, you'll continue to see maybe some moderation of that. I know that many of the banks and others have predicted that too. But my concern is that as people see, the transportation costs tick down a little bit, that we think that things are just better. And that's just fundamentally not true. It's kind of just obscuring the fact that these systemic challenges remain, that we have to address this long term. And again, I think that that's where the policy component of this is so critical. We have to lay that foundation for the future today to stay competitive and to have greater resiliency going into the future.
So we can't just keep putting Band-Aids on things?
No.
So I have one final question. The tech transformation audience is made up of both CPGs and retailers. So what do you wish that retailers knew when it comes to CPGs in the supply chain?
And I think that, first and foremost, it's that they very much want to be that partner. I think that there's a view at times that it's not as collaborative. That I think is far from the case. When I talk to CPGs, folks want to deliver for their customers. And I think that it's really about sitting down, being at the same table, having that common understanding, and then thinking about what are some of those areas like a contactless delivery or like other technology tools like data sharing that maybe there's that room to proceed and start initiatives and work together on things. Clearly, there's never going to be a time where everyone sees entirely eye to eye on something, but there are clearly some opportunities to collaborate on cutting edge technology and ensure that store shelves are stocked with the stuff that people want when they want it, and at the lowest possible cost. So I'm hopeful for it.
Hopeful for it. Well, I think we all are hopeful for it. So Tom, thank you so much for sharing your insight. I'd love to have you on in a future episode to see if any of these opportunities have come to fruition. I know probably hoping for a day where supply chain is not part of the dinner table conversation. We'll see if that ever happens. But for now, thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Lisa.